Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Republican elected officials and advocates made their way to the state capitol today to push voters to vote no on Proposition 1 on their ballots, which would enact a state version of the Equal Rights Amendment. Joining me now in studio, former Congressman, 2022 gubernatorial candidate Lee Zeldin to discuss this issue and a whole lot more. Welcome back to Capitol Tonight, Congressman.
Good to be with you.
It's good to see you. Break it down for us. Why should voters vote no on Proposition 1?
So there are so many different aspects of this that the Democrats have tried to, they call it an Equal Rights Amendment. There's actually nothing in there that will say Equal Rights Amendment. They say it's about abortion. Nowhere in it would you find the word abortion. But there's all sorts of other things that have absolutely nothing at all to do with that. It's simple language. I encourage people to go out and read for themselves. And it would create a protected constitutional right that would allow boys to compete in girls' sports, that would allow males to be able to access female bathrooms and locker rooms, to be able to advance this push for non-citizen voting like we saw in a law that was passed in New York City, to put into the state constitution a protection for sanctuary state status. So I'm voting no. I would encourage everyone else out there to vote no. When we were at the Capitol earlier today advocating for the launch of a coalition against Prop 1, it included Republicans and Democrats. People were there as parents. They were there as concerned New Yorkers. We might be on the different side of races on one side of the ballot where we're choosing our favorite candidate for a particular district, but when we go to the other side of the ballot, we're voting no on Proposal 1.
I'm sure it wouldn't surprise you to know that your Democratic friends see this completely the opposite way. What do you make of the argument when they say all this does is codify the rights that New Yorkers have and provide the same protections under the law?
I would encourage New Yorkers to actually read the language of Proposal 1. The good news is they don't have to take anyone's word for it. They can read it for themselves. It's only a sentence or two. And someone who was there, a concerned parent at today's press conference, was referring to this as the Parental Replacement Act. Well, why doesn't the media just call it the Parental Replacement Act? It's just as much a Parental Replacement Act as it is a Equal Rights Act, because when you look at the language on it, it doesn't say anything about Equal Rights Act. So I actually don't know of any larger attack on girls' sports in my lifetime. I don't know of a larger attack on women's rights in my lifetime. And there are people who, I would encourage all New Yorkers to not just get involved in elections on one side of a ballot to make sure that we know our candidates for office, but to get familiar with what's on the other side. Listen, if the Democrats wanted to have a statewide amendment on abortion, then they should have put the word abortion into their amendment, but they didn't. But they do include all sorts of other things that have absolutely nothing at all to do with abortion. Now, when we did a press conference here in Albany a few months ago, members of the media went to one of the bill sponsors, Brett Hoylman, to ask, is this a push that is about abortion, or is it about all these other things that we just said it was about when we were in Albany? And Brett Hoylman proudly was talking about how, yes, it was in fact very expansive, talking about all of these other things. So I appreciate the fact that he was willing to acknowledge that this wasn't to enshrine abortion rights, and it was in fact a push to do all sorts of other things.
I want to talk about some other topics as long as we have you here. It's been a while since we've seen you. A lot of our downstate viewers know you as a congressman, but across the rest of the state, they know you as a gubernatorial candidate, and you ran a pretty good campaign against now Governor Hochul, of course. But some people are wondering what's next for you. Obviously, you're a big supporter of the president who was in our state last night. We'll talk more about that in a second. But would you be willing to follow him to Washington? Because that's the speculation. Could we see a possible Veterans Affairs Secretary Lee Zeldin in the future? Are you open to that?
My focus is on November 5th, and there are things to possibly think about after November 5th that I will think about after November 5th. But for now, I am focused on campaigning for candidates I support. That's why I'm back here. Tonight, I'm going to be doing a Saratoga Republican Party rally, an event with Joe Griffo. Tomorrow lunchtime, I'll end up in the Finger Lakes in the evening and other events in between. I'll be with President Trump in Pennsylvania on Monday. I'm going up to Wisconsin on Tuesday and Wednesday campaigning with him. So we'll be active between now and November 5th. After November 5th, there'll be other things to think about.
All right, we'll ask you about that, I guess, after November 5th if you don't get questions about that beforehand. I do want to ask you this. Like my parents, you're a native Long Islander, and the president was on Long Island last night. I'm sure you must have been excited about that, but some people might wonder if that was a good use of his time. We know this is a very blue state. It will likely go for the Democratic candidate it has since the last Republican to win it was Ronald Reagan. With 50 days to go in the election, would President Trump's time been better spent, let's say, in Georgia, Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin, rather than New York?
So you know what's interesting is that here we are, it's the middle, getting close to the end of September. Siena College came out with a poll this morning, and on the presidential race, they said it was about 12, 13-point gap. When I ran for governor in 2022, Siena College polling at the end of September said that I was down by 17 points. And we know at the end of the day, I ended up getting just under 50% of the vote. So this race is clearly closer than it was 4 years ago. And on top of it, I'm sure that the president would love to be able to go to Washington with a Republican House and a Republican Senate to work with, as opposed to having to deal with maybe 3 more impeachments in 2025. And it's also as close to home and personal. He is a New Yorker. This is where his roots are. This is where he's from. He's helped build the New York City skyline. You know, visiting Nassau Coliseum, this isn't a first for him. He's probably been there many, many, many times in his life. These are native New Yorkers who strongly support him, who were asking for a rally. And I'm glad he was there. And the turnout was great. They were at capacity at the Coliseum with people who weren't able to get in outside. It was just a good, solid energy that I think doesn't just help with a presidential race and that message, but I think it also helps down ballot.
You were there last night. I know you spoke at this rally on Long Island. The president during that rally said he was committed to restoring SALT, state and local tax deduction, certainly important to people here in New York. Not necessarily all Republicans nationwide would be in support of that. First of all, are you in support of that? And do you think the voters will believe President Trump when he says he's in support of restoring SALT when he was a part of the administration that took it away in the first place?
Well, no, I absolutely believe it, because if you want to, first off, if you want to get a tax bill done in 2025, the only way to even have the votes is to be consistent with this position that he said yesterday. So it's something that philosophically, I believe is something that should get done. And I think in order to actually end up getting done, it's something that he'll have to continue to advocate for. I would also add that the reason why our state and local tax deduction was as high as it was for so many New Yorkers was because their state and local taxes were as high as they were. It wouldn't have been such a big issue if, like other states, our state and local taxes were lower. What I would call on is every level of government. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, federal, state, local. We need everyone making sure that they are as responsible as possible with taxpayer dollars, because a lot of people are leaving New York because they are struggling to make ends meet and they feel like their money will go further somewhere else. So when I ran for governor in 22, I challenged Governor Hochul to finish this sentence. I said, New York leads the state in out-migration because. I said, finish the sentence. She was actually posed the question at an airport in Binghamton, and she was stumbling on it. Now, it's an easy question that I believe that New York leads the state in the country in out-migration because New Yorkers feel like they're paying too much. They don't feel safe on streets. They were a tax on freedom. That was an issue in the 2022 race with COVID mandates. And they feel like if they go to one of these other states, their money will go further, they'll feel safer, they'll live life freer. That's why they're going. But you're not going to be able to get the state in the right direction. You're not going to be able to tackle the root causes of outmigration unless you're willing to and able to finish that sentence and confront it head on. And a lot of New Yorkers in that Siena College poll who gave Governor Hochul her lowest marks ever, net 20-point underwater, they also feel like the state is heading in the wrong direction.
We'll have to leave it there. More questions for you. We'll ask you at another time. Lee Zeldin, former congressman, gubernatorial candidate. Always good to see you. Thank you.
Great to see you as well.
Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, and click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.